Hello, this is Open Platform of Armenian Public Television, and today I will discuss the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and Turkey's involvement in it and the developments in the region. And today I am honored to host Mr. Jim Costa, who is a U.S. Congressman from California. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us and appreciate it. Congressman, you have presented many resolutions and joined many supporting Armenian people and Armenian cause and Armenian people of Artsakh. I would like to ask what motivates you the most?
Well, I born and raised in Fresno, California. I like to say the land of William Saroyan. And the Armenian community, as I think is well known, since the diaspora, as a result of the genocide, has become a very strong community in the San Joaquin Valley, first in agriculture, but later in many other fields in which the Armenian community demonstrated their tenacious hard work, desire to succeed, their values on family and education, and to, like immigrants from all around the world, come to this newfound country. And so growing up with the Khazarians and the Collegians and the Abrahamians in my neighborhood, we were all farmers. I, as a young man, learned of the Armenian Genocide from Daran Kaligian, a very close friend of my father's. And I was horrified to hear stories of neighbors with either themselves or their parents who were still alive at that time, who would tell firsthand of the atrocities that the Ottoman Empire perpetrated on the Armenian people deliberately, as was planned. That was one of the first genocides in the 20th century. And clearly that made an imprint on my mind that I've never forgotten. And so to be a member of Congress, to have the responsibility and the honor to represent the people of this wonderful valley, the Armenian communities, it was absolutely critical for me to ensure that I could do everything possible to, in fact, reflect and to do something about not only the genocide, but to continue to work with the Armenian communities on issues that involve Armenia, the first Christian nation. And I was able to fulfill a desire and a dream that I've had for many years, which was to visit Armenia several years ago, and to go to Yerevan, and to go to Ghani, and to see Mount Ararat from afar, and where St. Gregor, the martyr, was jailed or in that dungeon, and to see all the wonderful people that reminded me of the farms I grew up on, and to have the wonderful foods, the Armenian cucumbers, the kebabs, the bulgur, and I felt like I was at home. And I was. So those memories that I grew up with, and those neighbors that in many senses are still friends that I work with and that I see, I have an opportunity to not only reflect that history, but also to do something about it today. When we talk about the continued challenges that Armenia has in that part of the world with Turkey and Azerbaijan. Most recently, the outbreak that took place in recent months, and now still to see the Azeris refusing to comply with the agreement to release the prisoners of war and civilians that they are holding captive. It is very distressing. And I gave a speech on the House of Representatives last week saying that it's time for the United States, for America, to once again reestablish its role in this part of the world and to make sure our influence is felt. And it's my hope that President Biden on Saturday will announce that he believes what happened 106 years ago was genocide and man's inhumanity to mankind, and that we hold those who were involved with the Ottoman Empire accountable for that genocide. And today that we ask, that we implore, that we demand Turkey and Azerbaijan to comply with the agreement.
During the days of Second Artsakh War, as we call it, you released a statement which is calling to end of the violence. What is your position on recent war started by Azerbaijan and with the involvement of Turkey, which also imported terrorists, jihadi terrorists from different regions of the world?
It was outrageous. But Turkey's conduct over the last 10 years under Erdogan has taken what used to be a secular country that was a NATO member and stirred it into becoming as an Islamist regime, in my view, that is no longer in my view, a partner in NATO in good standing. They've not been in good standing, in my opinion, since they refused the United States' efforts to use Incirlik in the first Gulf War. They have not been a good NATO partner in terms of the challenges that we've had in this horrific civil war in Syria. And their continued attack on the Kurds really is a reflection, I think, of the, I don't know that it reflects the majority of the Turkish people, but certainly the Erdogan government to continue to spread hate and take actions that I think are in violation of human rights, whether we're talking about Artsakh, or whether we're talking about with the Kurds, or whether we're talking about their agreements under the NATO alliance to be a good partner. But I think we've seen a drift over the last 10 plus years under Erdogan that I think is great concern for many of us in Congress. And I've suggested that we should re-examine that NATO partnership, that we should re-examine whether or not we should relocate our assets at Incirlik so that, Turkey doesn't feel that they hold us hostage. I mean, they're already making comments about our U.S. naval forces moving through the Bosporus into the Black Sea. And those are international waters. And so I just don't think you continue, whether it's with Turkey or any other foreign country that we must deal with, because we are the world's last superpower. So we have to work with many, many countries, many that don't share our values, do not share our Western democratic institutions, but nonetheless, we have to interact with. But by that same token, I don't believe we should reward bad behavior. And Turkey has continued in recent years, whether it's with Armenia, whether it's with Artsakh, whether it's with the Kurds, they have been engaged, in my view, in bad behavior, and therefore they should not be rewarded for their actions.
Recently, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev inaugurated a so-called park in Baku where Armenian soldiers were presented in humiliating position. And also there were helmets of Armenian soldiers killed in the battles and other human rights and human dignity abuses. In addition, the president of Azerbaijan threatened the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Armenia. What is your position on it?
Well, first of all, I think under the Geneva Convention, Azerbaijan, with the creation of this museum, is in violation. And the fact that he and President Erdogan celebrated what they claim is a victory, which I dispute, after the conflict, and then to set up this museum in depicting Armenian soldiers in just the most horrible ways, and bringing children there only for one purpose: to continue to perpetrate hate. And clearly, I think we need to determine whether or not the Geneva Convention would rule on this whole military museum, or whatever they call it. As it relates to the disputed territories and the claim that if, these territories, Kornenakova, Artsakh, have been conclaves of Armenian communities historically, dating back to prior to the Ottoman Empire, and when the territorial boundary lines of Armenia was much greater. And so therefore, I think that the president of Azerbaijan is clearly out of line in his comments. And that's why I said on the House of Representatives floor last week, and if you see my speech, that it's time that the United States reestablish its presence in that part of the world, so that when we see outrageous behavior, not just by Turkey, but also by Azerbaijan, that we call them on it, and that we say that this is, as a nation in the world of nation states, that this is not the way in which you should conduct yourself if you want to continue to hold the respect and the ability to work in any way with the United States.
In one of his recent interviews, Aliyev announced that, quote, even if Armenia does not provide access, as he called, to Zangezur corridor, he will take it by force. And it means that he is threatening the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Armenia with its international recognized borders. What is your position on that?
Well, I'm opposed to the comments of the president of Azerbaijan. These are sovereign, defined territorial boundaries for the country of Armenia, and therefore they should be respected. And I think, once again, it's incumbent upon us in the United States to call Azerbaijan on that, his continued what we call saber rattling to threaten Armenia is totally wrong, and also irresponsible, and potentially could inflame new conflict, and it certainly creates greater tensions. But I believe that his strategy is also to create internal conflict and dissension within Armenia, because I think both he and Erdogan believe if they can continue to create dissension in which is a democratic republic, the nation of Armenia, that it could have consequences internally with the economic and political health of the people of Armenia. So I think there's another strategy here that not only deals with the potential violation of Armenian territory, but to continue to create dissension and internal conflict within the Armenian people, realizing that there's an election coming up, and therefore they want to, they think it benefits them by creating this internal debate and dissension within the country.
President of Azerbaijan also said that the conflict is solved, as he thinks, and he criticizes the OSCE Minsk group, and the USA is one of the co-chairs. He said that if the group has something new proposals, then he will think about them. What do you think? Is the conflict really solved? And what can US do about it?
Well, I believe he's wrong. And I think there is still an opportunity and a role for the Minsk group to participate on. The Nagorno-Karabakh Artsakh conflict is not over. And the presence and the importance of these Armenian communities must be recognized. And I think the only forum for that to take place at this time is the Minsk group, in which the United States has a role to play. And the fact that the last administration, in my view, more or less abdicated and left Russia to become the determiner of how that peace process was negotiated to reduce or to end the conflict, I think was a mistake. But that doesn't mean that we don't have an opportunity to rejoin that, especially with the threatening comments that the president of Azerbaijan is making today, and with the violation of human rights, the withholding of prisoners of war and civilians, and this display and total disregard of a conflict by utilizing Armenian military gear that was confiscated after the conflict and putting them on display and creating waxed images of Armenian soldiers in the most negative way, and bringing children to see if this is somehow an amusement park of sorts, or some sort of museum where they can learn something from. If they're learning anything, it's all it's horrible, and it's not true, and it serves only to perpetrate division and hate among people, especially young people, who are taught at an early age then to see these conflicts as enemies, and that's the purpose. This is propaganda in the worst way.
What do you think? Will there be any investigation on how Azerbaijan used the military and financial assistance from United States, and whether these financial assistance and military assistance were used with any violations, using the assistance against the civilians and people of Artsakh during the war?
Well, I think there's various ways that possibly can be examined. Certainly, the Foreign Relations Committee in the House of Representatives, of which I'm a member, I believe will continue to look at this. And we are currently considering a resolution to require Azerbaijan to live up to its agreement and return the prisoners of war and civilians that have taken place. But there are other things that we can do that not only Congress, but the administration, and I believe they're considering that. I think Saturday's announcement by the president will, in their view be maybe the first step. And then, Turkey's role in NATO, I think, is a question. The European Parliament years ago recognized the Armenian Genocide, and Turkey has continued to try to look upon whether or not they might be granted membership into the European Union. Although in recent years, it seems to be that Erdogan is less interested, although he did have a meeting last week or 2 weeks ago with the members of the European Commission and the Parliament. So I'm not sure what his goals are in that sense. But, I think that it's just not the United States. The European Union has a role to play here. And I think this needs to be a conversation with our NATO partners, that needs to be a conversation among NATO partners as to, what constitutes compliance with the agreements that are part of NATO membership.
As April 24 approaches and more politicians and other influential figures called President Biden to follow the Congress and officially recognize the Armenian Genocide, being the first president to do so, maybe after President Reagan, what is your expectation and what does the community expect from April 24 announcement?
Well, I think that's hope for a renewal of America's presence in that part of the world, as I suggested. I think we are the most credible and respected international partner to play that role. And I think the Armenian people understand that our institutions of democratic values, of human rights, and the ensuring to protect freedoms of speech, freedoms of religion, freedoms of press that are being violated in Turkey today, we've had our own challenges, to be sure, in our own country in recent years, in which some of our institutions have been tested, but we've demonstrated that our institutions of democracy are resilient and they're strong. They can be fragile, but they're resilient. And so I think if President Biden makes the announcement recognizing the Armenian Genocide on Saturday, that will be a signal to the entire world. But certainly in this part of where East meets West, in the part of what sometimes is referred to Eurasia, that America is back. And we've got work to do, to be sure. But we're not going to be silent when atrocities take place. And we're going to use all the various abilities that we have as a nation to ensure that we protect human rights, that we protect democratic countries and their institutions from authoritarian governments who only wish to divide and to control. Let's be clear, it's not just Azerbaijan. Turkey wants to create a hegemony in that part of the world. And that's Erdogan's aim with, I think, all of the actions he's taken in recent years with its neighbors and with the lack of willingness to be a good partner in NATO, which they, in my opinion, have not been.
Congressman, thank you very much for your time and for joining us. This is Open Platform of Public TV of Armenia, and today I discussed the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, Turkey's involvement in it, and the Armenian Genocide recognition in the United States. Mr. Jim Costa, U.S. Congressman from California, was my guest. Thank you for watching us.